Welcome to Totally Talent Podcast by HR.com, your go-to source for all things talent. Whether you're looking for expert insights on high-volume hiring, the latest trends in recruitment technology, or strategies for building a winning team, we've got you covered. Join us for each episode as we dive deep into the challenges and opportunities shaping the talent landscape today. Let's get started.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Totally Talent on HR.com. I am your host, Mike Wood, and we have a fun episode for you today. I am with Bill Mastin, who is the CEO of Cadient Talent. Bill, how are you?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thank you for having me today. Super excited to be part of your show.
So, Bill, you've been in the HR tech space for a while now, right? The majority of your career, correct? Now,
Correct. 20
and we had
plus
talked
years.
20 plus years. Okay, you got me beat. So, so we were talking a little bit off camera, but like, what are your initial thoughts for like where we are as an industry and kind of where we're going? Because I'm interested in what, yeah, from one veteran to the next.
Yeah, I think that we are at the most. I'm a technologist and have worked in software my whole career. So for the vast majority of my career, I've been very optimistic about things that technology can do for humanity, for work, for performance, for all those things. I do think that for the first time in my career, in my life, I'm actually seeing this kind of the most interesting inflection point of where humanity and technology are meeting that's ever existed. And it's because of what's happening in AI. And I think that that's we haven't figured it out yet. I think there's a lot of people that are saying, okay, this is going to the best thing since sliced bread. It's going to, radically transform the world of work, which it is. But it's like, is that actually, is that good? And you're already starting to see some companies push back from that and say, well, wait a second, bias is too much. And even in that same breath of like, hey, the risk of AI bias, you also have to then be able to say, okay, well, what about human bias and the kind of management hierarchy of bias that exists and has existed in business always. So how do you balance all these things? It's going to be a fascinating time, but I do think it's unique and it's unlike other technologies that we've kind of absorbed and used to just perform better. And so it's an interesting time to be alive for sure.
Totally. And so let's talk a little bit about how you've infused AI into your whole product suite. Just what does Cadient Talent do?
Yeah, so let me get just a little bit of history. Cadient Talent's actually been around for a long time, 20 plus years in the space. We actually started as Unicrew, and then we were acquired by Kronos. And so we became their recruitment applicant tracking system for a while. And then we spun out a few years ago and really right before the UKG merger, and we created Cadient Talent, which has traditionally focused on high volume frontline workforce hiring, which has some nuances to it and some specific kind of how do you hire at volume and scale across many locations with evergreen and pooling and all kinds of very kind of specific things. But what has been interesting, and really the last 18 months, Cadient has started to invest in building a whole suite of modules that sit not only on our ATS, but can actually integrate on other ATSs, things that help source, screen, AI conversational screening, those kinds of capabilities and video interviewing capability, all of that. But then jump ahead also to start focusing on retention, which is a huge problem. You spend a lot of money bringing someone into an organization and then, they resign because whatever. How do you actually get the information to keep them engaged and really figure out the problem before it exists? So anyway, we've kind of expanded with a lot of AI around the peripheral of our ATS that actually can be used not only on our own system but other systems as well.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I see a lot of so it's like the AI tools that exist or should exist are already being created right now, and sitting on
Right.
top of an ATS, helping you do your work. Um, this is all great, but what would you say to the people that would say, okay, this tech is going to replace recruiters? I'm sure you've heard that.
Yeah, and I think that first of all, the companies that are going to stay the most competitive are the ones that are going to figure out how to leverage technology to the benefit of the organization. If an organization's growing, I don't. I do think that there's like longer term. I'm going to see there's um, AI wrapping of almost every role in a business to make them more efficient and more capable. And depending on what that role is, you could see a future where companies start to, decide that maybe they don't need the volume of people that they've had historically. That's just kind of the nature of technology. I do think as a society we have to figure that out because it's a bigger issue than one company and one role. It's a societal kind of human issue that we need to solve for. But I do think that the tools that we're providing now are going to combat the AI that our candidates are using to actually present themselves. I mean, I've already heard some just fascinating stories just in the last month about full deepfake interviews, about people using an AirPod to get ChatGPT answers during a live interview. So, how do you create the best possible way for a recruiter that is going out to hire, that the chance that they're actually going to get the right person in the right seat and all that kind of stuff. Like you have to use AI to combat AI in some ways.
And then there's, well, so what I'm like, okay, the candidates are using AI, and I don't blame them to use AI to get
Right.
through all the hoops that they have to go through in order to apply for a job or to get as fast as possible and get as far as possible in the process because the economy isn't the best right now and lots of people are
Right.
looking for jobs. So I don't blame people this, but what makes me kind of laugh is you're going to get recruiters that are going to be able to go to so far in terms of like they're able to get their short list of 10 top candidates. Now those 10 top candidates, let's say they're all 90% matches or whatever. What if they all use ChatGPT to maximize their own thing? So now you're getting like the window dressing of 10 people that
Right.
look way too similar, and you're at square one now, where you have to manually go through and evaluate all these people.
Back to face-to-face interviews and all of that. Like how do you and it is difficult to figure out like how are you going to do this at scale, because it's also there's very specific, like it's not apples to apples in hiring world. If you're hiring knowledge workers or developers, it's very different than high volume workers, right? So each have their own kind of challenges you're dealing with. I mean, I'm going to give you a personal example. My daughter's 16 years old. She works at a retail store around the corner. At 9 months, she is not only the longest term employee, that's even over the managers. They've come into her, a 16-year-old, tell us how this whole store operates. So there's some organizations that I'm seeing that are having 150, 200% turnover. Now, why is that? It's because there's other now tools for candidates out there to, like, for instance, with Indeed, you can post your resume and always have it up and live. So, if my daughter says she wants to go catch the Tuesday night concert, she just, resigns and goes to the concert, and she has 3 other jobs that are out there that are pretty much the same kind of jobs. So it's trying to figure out how do you not only hire the right person, but how do you actually figure out how to retain what you have hired and invested in. So it's a, it's kind of across the board. AI is going to kind of infect every part of the process from hiring through to, leaving, I guess. So
Now, like the retain part is interesting to me because I feel like years ago, maybe when I was starting my career, they definitely wanted to retain people. Like companies, they just that's
right,
a huge part, and we know how much it costs to replace somebody. But I feel like there's just been this like shift in the past couple of years, like where we could just get rid of anybody, hire anybody. Like the having someone at a company for 5 or 6 years even is still kind of like a kind of long time at this point. So, I write a lot about like what do we want the future work to look like? Are we all just making
right.
like 2 year stops at different places in our career?
Yeah, I mean, it almost becomes like a gig worker, like, everybody's a gig worker and we're just taking slivers of work. And, but I think where that breaks down, I do think there's certain roles in certain companies that, that
Hmm.
is possible for. I always think of it as like wait staff, at restaurants, being able to move around, like that skill of customer management is very portable. But there's other roles that you really do impact the business if you lose. And there's the old kind of adage. I don't know if these things are how true they are. I've never seen real studies, but they'll say, like, 50% of the work gets done by 10% of the workforce. And like those people that you want to really make sure you hold on to. It's like, how do you identify those people? How do you make sure you retain those people? Um, and you're right, though, that the world has shifted on all of that, and it's going at much faster rate of change than we've ever experienced before as well.
Yeah, and it just says like from one dad to another. So I have two daughters. My oldest is almost 10, so I have plenty of time to worry about the future. Whereas yours is 16, and I have another friend that I talked to yesterday that son is out of college for like 2 years, and he's still looking for a job. And like,
Yeah.
where is that inflection point to put yourself into the market? And so part of me worries about the class of 2030 or whatever, like what are they going to walk into? And so I just in terms of like thinking with your own daughter, like what advice would you give to someone with a young child who's going to be going off to school soon?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest change, that I think I've watched in my lifetime. My father finished a career and got a gold watch, kind of, mentality, right? And I Gen X, and I've never really experienced that kind of gold watch work experience myself. And so I've moved around, but it's been a few years. Usually, I go to an organization and I work for a few years and go on and so on and so forth. I think that you almost have to look at the future very much from an entrepreneurial mindset, that, it's going to require constantly learning, which, there's no kind of steady state of like, oh, I've learned everything, that I need to know, and I'm going to be able to just, be okay in my job. Like it's going to be constant change from here on out, even in jobs that we believed were really undisruptible, I think are headed for massive disruption with AI and robotics. I mean, I'll give you this data point too. I think this is maybe a couple years old now, but it was in half the states. So, you know, half the states, transportation was in the top three job categories, or travel,
Yep,
transportation,
you still need
drivers.
people to
I
deliver
mean,
stuff.
you still do until you don't. Like, and what's going to happen when, automated vehicles and then robot deliveries and I do think it will be a process that happens where someone says, okay, we got to have someone in the vehicle as we're driving, but it's self-driving, so we can just have them, it's just helpful, right? Then you're going to be like, well, one person can manage 10 vehicles, but they just have to be sitting there watching 10 screens in a remote location. Then it's like, well, one person watching 100 screens. And then it's like, why do we need the person? So there's a journey that we're on. And this is what I'll tell you, the economics always win. So
Yeah.
on a long enough timeline, like the businesses in our form of government and capitalism and the way we operate, it's a profit motive. And so a margin will win out over time. So it's like, how do you predict, where those opportunities are going to be coming in the future for our daughters? Is how, to be able to operationalize a business or, a career in, dancing with that kind of new world, because I can see it as clear as like the, sunrise, that it's happening. Like, you can't stop the world from spinning. Like, companies are always going to do what makes them more profitable. If that means, less jobs, and then you maybe have more companies and more, maybe everybody is their own LLC or S corp, and everybody operates as like an independent
Well, we're all
company.
going to
And
be fractional. We're already seeing it.
that's right.
Everybody's fractional now, because, a company's not going to want to hire you for 2 years or something if you're a CMO, and then uh, get rid of you and have to pay all the, the stuff that they just hire a fractional person. And then that fractional person maybe has 2 or 3 clients. I could see a lot more of that. I laugh about
Yeah.
the autonomous driving because we know it's coming. There's too much money being poured into it. But the
Yeah.
problem is that I can't imagine a world where all the cars on the road went the speed limit. Like, it's
Oh,
going to take
yeah.
so much longer to get places because you're going to be
Well,
stuck in, like, the car can't break the law. You can, but
I mean, of course, we talked off camera about flying cars, and if you go check out Archer and some of the stuff going in China, like we're on the precipice of us starting to really see that kind of Jetson world where maybe the robots are on the streets, and then we all get flying cars finally, and we gotta get above the noise.
so when I was a
Anyway,
kid, when I first started driving around 16, I drove an '86 Pontiac that was my grandmother's. My grandmother had lived with us, and I remember driving her, and she didn't even have a clock in the car. She had to buy an external clock from CVS and like tape it to the dash. And I just remember her riding with me and getting mad because I was changing the station on the radio. Like, I would just keep changing the
yeah,
station on the radio, and she's like, "Don't touch the buttons, you're gonna die." That's gonna be me in this autonomous vehicles in the future. Is I'm just gonna be like, "What are you doing?" Like, I can't imagine stepping into one of those things for the first time. But
yeah,
it's coming. I have a friend that's been working on flying cars for a Boston startup for a long time. I forget the name, which is probably good because I probably can't say what it is. But he was saying that the taxi of the future will be able to pick you up and then almost like a mini helicopter type of thing, pick you up and just drive over to another end of town and drop you off. And I'm like, that is great in
yeah.
theory. That's the type of world I want to live in. So, there's a lot of good stuff happening, even though it can get to the point where you're like, oh wow, this is really draining. But there is a lot of good stuff out there.
Yeah. I mean, I do think to kind of take it back to our world of hiring and keeping businesses filled with the people that need to still operate them today. I mean, bias is a big deal, and I think the um, AI bias, making sure that your LLMs are, thoughtful and not discriminatory in hiring practice and all of that. Like, companies are going to have to step it up and really prove that to the market that, hey, we're thoughtful, expose the logic. Okay. And I think, companies that do that and kind of get trust with their customers, that will be hugely beneficial to kind of both parties. I do think, though, that you also um, have to balance that with what has always been accepted as a reality. Like, if I think about a workforce that's frontline, even if the thing about this is, like, we talk about AI bias a lot, but think about this: if a workforce isn't willing to expose to their boss that they're thinking about leaving, which they don't, because why would you? If you're going to leave, you're going to just leave. Um, and then, even if they do expose it, do they communicate that up the chain? Like, your top level executives don't necessarily have their finger on the pulse of the risks that exist down in the front line. So
Nope.
how do you fix that? And one of the ways that we have a product that we've launched and are putting out in the market and started to get some traction with is Smart Feedback, which is around our retention, which is a lightweight conversational AI that's talking constantly, or as often as you want, with the employees in a non-threatening way, where your employees can say, yeah, you know what, I don't like the fact that I only get a 15-minute break and they have Twinkies in the break
Hmm.
room. Like, I want, something healthy. And so you can actually figure out and get analytics and kind of a roll up of what does your frontline workforce, because that isn't going to change anytime soon. You're still going to need people to sell things, to engage the public, all of those things. How do you protect that group of people? And what I would say is the management hierarchy that has existed since the inception of corporations has never really been uh, functionally perfect in respect to retention. Exit interviews are too late. right? Like you don't, okay,
Yep.
it's too late. Like their person's left. How do I get information that I can actually action? And we think AI can actually help with those kinds of channels in a very unique way to give a third party perspective that you're not getting from your own management team. So I think that kind of stuff can actually help businesses today be more effective and better for the employee too.
Yeah, and so like as a CEO, like you want to know how your employee base is feeling. You want to know what's going on. You don't want to take a huge amount of time out of your day because you're so busy. But if you had these pulse
Right.
surveys that are going out there, that then you could ask that agent, "Hey, what are the top three negative pieces of feedback that I'm hearing? What are the three positive ones?" And now it gives you actionable things to work on.
Right.
And
And
oftentimes, I mean,
people
it could
don't
be
feel
small things. It could be the Twinkies in the break room. It could be something really small.
right. And people don't feel comfortable a lot of times surfacing that. I'll give you another data point. Fortune magazine, a couple months ago, released an article. They said already Gen Z, I think it was 10 or 15% of Gen Z already said they would rather have an AI manager than a real manager, a person manager. And the reason why was because they don't have to deal with the emotional baggage, because a lot of management, as you know, out in the field, they haven't been trained. They're not, emotionally intelligent enough to really be, if they were great individual contributors, maybe they got put into those management roles and they're not, great at that role. And definitely the people that are working for them don't want to be open with them because it's not the right environment. It's not a safe environment. Actually, AI, as kind of weird as that sounds, is a way to create a feedback loop so that you can actually figure out what's going on in your workforce in a new way.
And I love that. So I get pigeonholed by thinking about, talent acquisition and how to use HR there. I hadn't really thought about performance management. I mean, I've seen some tools where you can get automatic feedback, which just sounds a
Hmm.
little bit too much. If you had like no matter what you did, you would always get feedback. So like
Right,
when I go home and I tell my parents like anything like that I've done or whatever, it's always that was good, but you could have done this better, and that's just how they are, and it's that gets draining over time. So, but I think
hmm,
there's so much emotional baggage to having a bad manager and having a bad experience that at least if you know that okay, this is a robot that's concerned with my performance. It's not playing games. It's not playing politics. Um, and if it's set up to highlight some things that I do, maybe that goes up the chain, that would make me feel better about everything.
right,
Because you hear
right,
people don't leave companies, they leave managers. And I think if you left people alone a little bit more, they would feel a little bit better about their work environment. So I do like that.
right.
What else do you got to see on the horizon?
I think that in the near term, what you're going to start to see, and what we're working with our customers on, is a way to really validate candidates, and that
Hmm.
they are who they say they are, not just from the background check perspective, but actually doing things like detecting, sentiment analysis of and screening in our smart screen tool, right? That'll actually, you know, verify if they're the right fit, and we don't hire people for our customers. We just give them some data and analytics where they can use to make the process better. But I think validation is one thing, and then I think this kind of concept of protective like wrapper around people. I think of it in that way. That's going to help them be more successful, be more productive and efficient. Um, and I think that's gonna that'll be down the road, and that covers from performance to learning to retention to basically everything that we've been doing in HR, from hiring to onboarding and everything onwards. We've been doing that for decades now. It's like, how do you do that and contextualize AI around that, and what does that look like? And I think that's a very uh, something that nobody's done yet. It's kind of moving in that direction. And what does that have to do with um, the future of work? What does that future of work look like when you're married with your agents and surrounded by your agents. And you see other organizations, Workday's already talking about this. There's others that are already talking about what does that mean, but how I visualize it might be a little bit different than maybe what some of the other companies are talking about it. So
Yeah, so I just wrote something last week about the digital identity clones that are being worked on right now. And just since you're
right.
pretty tapped in, do you know much about that, or like, what? Have any thoughts on that?
I mean, I haven't really gone deep into that yet, but I mean, I'm assuming it has, some validation of identity, and which really speaks, again, broader than a company context. It becomes like, how do you operate in society, and how do you know that, in some cases, from voting to, paying my, to, I mean, the spam in the world and the phishing and the cyber crime, it's only escalating. And so I don't know how you combat that without kind of a protective, immunity, immunity buffer barrier around your
Yeah.
identity, which would be kind of battling AI. So it kind of comes down. I mean, it feels a little melodramatic and feels like a little bit cyberpunkish, but you visually have AI fighting AI to kind of protect, companies and people and governments, and what does that look like in the future? It's going to be crazy for sure.
Yeah, all the crime for like government against government now is all cybercrime. So it's like that's where,
Yeah.
the bad things are happening. So I'm not surprised it would filter out into the consumer lens.
I think they said hundreds of millions of dollars have been um, funneled to North Korea by North Korean employees getting hired by US corporates working in North Korea and using VPN to basically do jobs for American companies as North Koreans. And then that money is flowing from corporate America right into North Korea to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars in the last 5 years. I think that was a report that hit the wire this week that I was
Yeah, I
reading. So
can't
it's
remember which
fascinating.
one it was, but there was a big healthcare company that got hacked by a couple
Yeah.
North Koreans that had joined the employee ranks and then were just funneling all that sensitive information back to North Korea. But hey, it's a
Right.
crazy
And I
time
mean,
right now. But
they were getting paychecks on top of the information, right? It
yes,
wasn't
yes,
just a
thank you.
hacking. They were actually getting paychecks, and then they were stealing the information.
That's great. Hey,
Anyway,
those North Koreans need it more than I do. I've seen pictures of what it's
yeah,
like living there.
right,
But Bill,
yeah.
I want to thank you for your time. This is great. Anybody, please check out Cadient Talent, and all the things that they're up to, for your hiring needs. And we look forward to talking with Bill and others in the future about what the future is really going to look like 5 years from now.
It's great. Thank you, Mike, for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Totally Talent podcast by HR.com. We hope you find today's episode insightful and inspiring. Don't forget to explore more episodes and discover valuable resources at hr.com/podcasts, where you can listen to all of our podcasts. Until next time, keep leading with purpose and making a difference in the world of talent.